There is a blue plastic chair on my little balcony that cost me 350 pesos, about $6. Every morning, before the traffic starts climbing the ridge, I sit in that chair with a chipped white mug of coffee and watch fog move across the roofs of Tagaytay. Some mornings the fog is so thick I cannot see the Sari Sari store across the road. Then a rooster starts up somewhere behind the houses, a tricycle rattles past with its little engine coughing, and the smell of garlic rice drifts up from the kitchen below me. That is usually the moment when I remember the number, $6,800. That was everything I had left when I landed in the Philippines. No house to sell, no investment account, no secret emergency fund, no wealthy brother waiting to wire me money. I had one suitcase, one carry-on bag, a folder of documents, and $6,800 sitting in a checking account back in Ohio. I know how that sounds. Reckless, desperate, maybe even stupid. Believe me, I had already used all three words on myself. My name is Walter Briggs. I'm 69 years old, born and raised outside Toledo, Ohio. I spent 34 years working in warehouse operations, mostly for an auto parts distributor. I started loading pallets on the night shift and finished as a floor supervisor with a bad right knee, a stiff neck, and a collection of company jackets I never wore after retirement. For most of my life, I thought I was careful with money. I paid bills early, I bought used cars, I packed sandwiches for work instead of eating out, I had a pension, Social Security, and what I believed was enough savings to live modestly. Then life began taking pieces out of me. First came the divorce. My wife and I had been married for 31 years. We did not have one dramatic explosion. There was no affair that I knew about, no police at the door, no smashed dishes. We simply spent years becoming strangers in the same house. By the time we admitted it, the lawyers were dividing a life that had taken 3 decades to build. I lost the house. More accurately, we sold it, paid what was still owed, paid legal fees, split what remained, and discovered that the word equity sounds much bigger before everybody takes their share. Then I had surgery on my knee. Insurance covered most of it, but most is a dangerous word when you are already counting every dollar. There were deductibles, physical therapy, prescriptions, and months when I could not pick up the part-time work I had planned to do after retirement. Then the pension adjustment came. It was not gone. I do not want to exaggerate, but the amount I had built my retirement budget around was reduced after changes to the plan and deductions I had not fully understood. Between my pension and Social Security, I was bringing in about $2,140 a month after the usual deductions. That sounds livable until you start subtracting. $975 for a small apartment in a tired complex near Toledo. $180 for utilities in winter, sometimes more. Medicare costs, supplemental insurance, prescriptions, car insurance, gas, groceries, phone, and the little surprises that never feel little when you are retired. A dental crown, a transmission warning light, a heating bill after 5 straight nights below freezing. By the end, I was not living. I was defending myself from the next invoice. I tried everything before I left. That part matters to me because people hear a story like mine and imagine I woke up one morning, watched a travel video, and bought a one-way ticket before lunch. I did not. I moved to a cheaper apartment. It had stained carpet, thin walls, and a bathroom fan that sounded like a lawnmower. I sold my truck and bought a 12-year-old sedan. I stopped buying anything that was not food, medicine, or absolutely necessary. I applied for part-time jobs at a hardware store, a grocery warehouse, and a building supply company. At 68, with a repaired knee, I discovered that employers admire experience right up until they see the date on your resume. One manager told me I was overqualified. Another said the work might be too physical. One never called back after telling me the interview had gone great. I even considered moving in with my daughter, Melissa. She lives in Indiana with her husband and 2 boys. She offered, and I want that understood. She is a good daughter. But their house has 3 bedrooms, 2 growing teenagers, 1 dog that believes every visitor is a wrestling partner, and a marriage that did not need an old man sleeping 10 feet from the laundry room. I stayed with them for 6 weeks after my apartment lease ended. I slept on a fold-out sofa in the finished basement. Every morning I folded the blankets before anybody came downstairs. I kept my toiletries in a little travel bag. I tried not to use too much hot water. I bought groceries, even when Melissa told me not to. You are 68 years old, sitting in your daughter's living room, listening to her and her husband whisper about bills in the kitchen. You know they love you. You also know love does not create another bedroom. One evening, my younger grandson came downstairs looking for a video game controller. He stopped when he saw me sitting on the edge of the sofa with my shoes beside me and my clothes stacked in plastic bins. He asked, "Grandpa, are you living here now?" I said, "Just for a little while." He nodded and ran back upstairs. I do not know why that question hurt as much as it did. Maybe because I had no answer beyond a little while. Maybe because for the first time in my life I could not explain what happened next. That night I opened my laptop and typed something embarrassing into YouTube. Where can a broke American retire? I know. Famous last words. The first videos were nonsense. Men posing beside swimming pools claiming they lived like kings for $800 a month. Young travel vloggers calling a 2-week vacation moving abroad. Retired men talking about dating as if women were another item on a budget spreadsheet. I nearly closed the laptop. Then I found a plain video made by a 72-year-old widower living in Iloilo. No drone footage, no luxury condo. He sat at a kitchen table with a fan turning behind him and explained what he spent in a month: rent, electricity, groceries, health insurance, visa extensions, transportation. He talked about mistakes too. He had overpaid for his first apartment. He had trusted the wrong person with a deposit. He missed his family more than he expected. But his total monthly spending was around $1,300. I watched the entire video twice. Then I watched another from an older couple in Bohol. Then one from a retired nurse in Tagaytay. Then a long-timer in Cebu who spent half the video warning people not to arrive without research. That warning actually made me trust him. For the next 4 months, I researched like I was preparing for an audit. I joined Expat forums. I read arguments in Facebook groups. I made lists of visa rules, medical facilities, average rents, humidity, typhoon exposure, transportation, and banking options. I compared Mexico, Ecuador, Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines. The Philippines kept pulling me back for 3 reasons. English was widely spoken, the retirement numbers were possible on my income, and the people in the videos did not all look rich or adventurous. Some looked like me, tired, careful, a little embarrassed by how close they had come to running out of road. Tagaytay caught my attention because of the cooler weather and its distance from the heat and congestion of central Manila. The city sits along a ridge overlooking Taal Lake. It is not cold, not Ohio cold, but the air is often cooler, especially in the morning. There were hospitals nearby, supermarkets, buses, and rentals outside the tourist center that were far cheaper than anything I could find back home. I made a budget. My target was $1,500 a month. Rent under $400, food under $300, utilities and internet under $150, transportation under $100, healthcare, visa costs, phone, and everything else from what remained. I told Melissa 3 weeks before I bought the ticket. She stared at me across her kitchen table as if I had announced I was joining the circus. "The Philippines?" she said. "Yes." "Do you know anyone there?" "No." "Have you ever been there?" "No." "Dad, this is insane." I told her I had researched it. I showed her my budget. I showed her hospital locations, rental listings, visa information, and the name of a guest house where I planned to stay for my first month. She kept asking the question I could not answer in a way that satisfied either of us. What happens if it goes wrong? The truth was, I did not have a backup plan. A flight back to the United States would have consumed money I needed for deposits and rent. I no longer had an apartment waiting for me. I could return to Melissa's basement, but that did not feel like a plan. It felt like proof I had failed. The morning I left, my daughter drove me to the airport. We barely spoke during the final 20 minutes. At the curb, she hugged me so tightly I could feel her shaking. She said, "Please do not disappear over there." I promised I would call every Sunday. Then I walked through the sliding doors before she could see I was crying too. My first memory of the Philippines is heat, not postcard heat. Heavy, wet heat that wrapped around me the moment I stepped outside the airport in Manila. My shirt stuck to my back within minutes. Cars pressed together in every direction. Horns sounded constantly. Men held signs. Families waited behind railings. Somebody was selling bottled water from a cooler. The air smelled like diesel, rain on pavement, and grilled meat. I had arranged a car through the guest house because every forum warned newcomers not to improvise after a long flight. The driver was named Carlo. He was 36, cheerful, and completely unbothered by traffic that made me grip the door handle. As we climbed toward Tagaytay, the air changed. The city thinned out. Roadside fruit stands appeared with pineapples stacked in pyramids. The temperature dropped just enough for me to notice. My guest house room cost 1,600 pesos a night, about $28 at the exchange rate then. That was more than I wanted to spend long term, but it gave me a safe first month with internet, breakfast, and someone downstairs who could answer questions. On my second morning, I woke before sunrise because of jet lag. I stepped onto a narrow shared balcony. The railing was damp. Somewhere below, a woman swept concrete with a stiff broom. I could hear spoons tapping against cups in the kitchen. For a few minutes, I felt proud. Then the fear arrived. I was nearly 7,000 miles from my daughter. I knew nobody. I did not understand the transportation system. I did not have a permanent address. I had spent almost $900 on the flight and initial bookings. My $6,800 was already becoming 6,000 something. I went back into the room, sat on the bed, and opened my banking app 3 times as if the number might improve. The first 2 weeks were not paradise. I got overcharged by a tricycle driver because I did not know the normal fare. I bought the wrong phone data package. I toured an apartment that looked clean in photos but smelled strongly of mold. I ate something from a roadside stall that kept me close to the bathroom for a full day. I also learned. The guest house owner, a woman named Lorna, explained which jeepney route passed the supermarket. Carlo introduced me to his cousin who knew a landlord with a small furnished unit available outside the main tourist strip. A retired American named Dennis, whom I met at a coffee shop, told me never to hand over a deposit before seeing identification and a written lease. The apartment was on the second floor of a concrete building above a family-run eatery. It had 1 bedroom, tiled floors, a small refrigerator, a 2-burner stove, an electric fan, and the narrow balcony where I now sit every morning. The rent was 18,000 pesos a month. At the exchange rate then, about $320. Back in Ohio, I had paid $975 for less light, worse neighbors, and a view of a parking lot. I paid 1 month in advance and 2 months as deposit. That hurt. Nearly $1,000 left my account in a single afternoon. I remember signing the lease with a cheap blue pen while sweat collected under my collar. But that evening I carried my suitcase into a place that was mine. Not my daughter's basement, not a guest house. Mine. The first thing I bought was the blue plastic chair. The second was a rice cooker. My monthly expenses did not stay as low as the most optimistic videos promised. Electricity can rise when I use air conditioning. Imported food is expensive. Visa extensions cost money. Private medical care is cheaper than in the United States, but it is not free. I keep emergency savings for flights and treatment, and I do not pretend $6,800 was an ideal amount to arrive with. But my regular spending settled at around $1,450 a month, rent 18,000 pesos, electricity and water, usually 5,000 to 6,000 pesos combined, depending on air conditioning, internet and phone about 2,000, food usually 15,000 to 18,000 because I cook most meals and buy local produce. Transportation, visa expenses, medications, and everything else fill the rest. For the first time in years, my monthly income was more than my basic monthly life. That difference changed me. Not because I became rich. I did not. I still compare prices. I still keep a spreadsheet. I still feel a little jolt of anxiety when an unexpected expense appears. But I stopped waking up afraid of the mailbox. I stopped calculating whether I could afford to turn up the heat. I stopped feeling like every meal at my daughter's house was evidence that I had become a burden. The part I did not expect was belonging. The family downstairs learned my routine. If I am late coming down in the morning, Lorna's sister calls up the stairs, "Sir Walter, coffee?" The young man at the produce stand saves the smaller bananas for me because he knows I cannot finish a large bunch before they ripen. Carlo still messages me when heavy rain is coming or when he hears about a road closure. On Sundays, I call Melissa exactly as promised. At first, she questioned every detail. Was the door secure? Did I have a doctor? Was I eating properly? Had anyone asked me for money? After 6 months, she began saying something different. "You sound better, Dad." I was better, not cured of age, not rescued from every mistake, not transformed into some fearless world traveler, just better. I walked more because daily errands were close. I lost 12 pounds. My blood pressure improved. I made friends with Dennis and 2 other retired men who meet for breakfast every Wednesday. We complain about our knees, exchange practical information, and argue about which bakery makes the best pan de sal. Last year, Melissa visited with her oldest son. I was nervous for weeks. I wanted the apartment to look respectable. I bought new sheets. I fixed a loose cabinet hinge. I cleaned the balcony twice. When she arrived, she stood in the doorway looking around at the tiled floor, the little kitchen, the fan turning above the table, and the framed photograph of her family beside my television. Then she walked onto the balcony and sat in the blue plastic chair. She looked across the rooftops toward the fog and said, "Okay, I get it now." Those 5 words meant more to me than she probably realized. I did not need her to admit I had been right. I needed her to see that I had not disappeared. I had built something. People sometimes ask whether the Philippines saved me. That is the word in the title, and it is the word I use because it feels true. But I want to be careful about what it means. A country cannot fix every broken retirement. Cheap rent cannot heal loneliness by itself. Warm weather does not erase bad decisions. There are scams here, there is bureaucracy, there is poverty that should not be romanticized. There are days when the internet fails, traffic stops moving, rain comes sideways, and I miss my family so badly that the apartment feels much smaller than it is. The Philippines did not save me by turning my life into a vacation. It saved me by giving my income room to breathe. It gave me a door I could close without feeling guilty. It gave me neighbors who noticed whether I came downstairs. It gave me enough dignity to call my daughter because I missed her, not because I needed somewhere to sleep. Would I tell every retired American with $6,800 to buy a ticket tomorrow? Absolutely not. Research first, visit if you can, keep more emergency money than I had. Understand visa rules, get health coverage, never lend money you cannot afford to lose. Do not confuse friendliness with obligation, and do not arrive expecting another country to rearrange itself around you. But I would tell them this: running out of conventional options is not the same as running out of life. Sometimes the plan you are ashamed to explain is the first honest plan you have made in years. Tomorrow morning I will wake before 6. The tiles will feel cool under my feet. I will heat water, spoon coffee into the chipped white mug, and step onto the balcony while the ridge is still hidden in fog. The rooster will start. A tricycle will rattle past. Somebody downstairs will fry garlic rice. And I will sit in a $6 blue plastic chair in an apartment I can afford, nearly 7,000 miles from the basement where I thought my life had narrowed to nothing. $6,800, no backup plan, and somehow enough room to begin again.